right, today's Daily Ticker brought to you by Pelican Brewing Company. Whether you're on the nice list or the naughty list, celebrate the season with Pelican's Festive Brew, Bad Santa, Cascadian Dark Ale.
Ho, ho, ho.
I know the naughty list will include all conference voters and a lot of award voters. The nice list would include our friend and the Commissioner of College Football, Josh Pate. His show every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. Live at 5 o'clock our time on YouTube. You can catch podcasts wherever you get your podcasts at Josh Pate CFB. On Twitter, go give him a follow. Very cool last night, by the way, for those following awards. They announced live on the show the Joe Moore Award finalists.
Yes, they did.
And the Oregon Ducks, think about saying that in week 2, that Oregon would be a finalist for the Joe Moore Award.
I was laughing in my kitchen this morning listening to his podcast, and I heard that part, and I laughed. I went, remember Boise and Idaho? And
Couldn't block anybody.
No.
Pate, good morning to you. Are we angry about the rankings? Should we be angry, or does the back end of the top 12 not matter as much? Do we not have the same vitriol that we had last year with the Florida State-Alabama debate?
Well, the first thing you just reminded me is I need to go delete some videos about my takes on Oregon's offensive line in week 1, 2, and 3. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Second thing is I woke up yesterday morning and I told myself, do not let yourself get mad tonight. It's an argument over an 11 or 12 or 13 seed, not a 3 or 4 seed. All these teams have multiple losses. They're credibly flawed. Do not allow yourself to get worked up. And then I found myself starting to get worked up, but I let the balloon go. The air came out, and I am happy to tell you this morning nobody got screwed, because it's impossible to get screwed if you've lost a quarter of your games. And that's what I would say to Ole Miss. That's what I would say to Alabama if they were left out. I'd say the same thing to South Carolina. I don't have an issue with it. If the dust settles and Alabama's in, so be it. If they're out, also, so be it. I think the much bigger point of contention potentially is going to be if SMU loses a competitive game Saturday and they get bumped out for having played in the conference title game behind a bunch of teams that sat at home. That's your big point of contention. But anyone saying like a massive screw job was dealt to Miami or to South Carolina or Ole Miss, like what are we talking about?
let me ask you about that. The conference title games are this weekend. We looked up Big Ten tickets in Indy. It's $12 to get in. So I think Ohio State fan not showing up has opened up a lot of tickets for this thing. But it's interesting because the narrative about this has been brewing for a couple weeks now. Dirt just said before you hopped on that he wouldn't count conference championship games to the resume. He would only allow the winner of that game to maybe get the bye, but he wouldn't count the loss.
I'm not punishing a team for losing a conference champion, to be knocked out of the playoffs.
And I'm still a little confused by it, but like sorting it out, what is your takeaway on conference championship? Because it won't shock me, Josh, if SMU, who comes in at 8, loses to Clemson, and God forbid they lose by 10, let's just say, and they're out and Bama's in. What say you with conference championship games? Where do you think college football people, not the execs, not the committees, where do the college football people want this to go?
I think there ought to be a third column. Win, loss, and then a third column, and that column is those who lose their conference title games. There's no way that loss should be treated equal to a loss you had in week 4. The entire premise was you got the job done in the regular season so well, you earned a right to play an extra game. To then arbitrarily hold that against the team and drop them behind teams that didn't earn that right is insane to me. I also, though, like my bigger issue here is I think we're going to learn it's not so much an ACC thing or an SEC thing. Yes, the SEC does have cachet, and they've earned it. Like, I don't even have a big problem with that. But I also grew up in the South, so take of that or make of that what you will. But I think that it is an SMU problem. I think if Miami or Florida State or Clemson were in the exact position SMU is in right now, this would be a moot point. We would know they're in. SMU has no brand equity built up with anyone. I think a lot of the country has failed to even watch them play this year. I think most people think of them as a team that's in Dallas. They had the death penalty in the 80s. That's about the extent of what most people know about SMU. So they have no brand equity. Alabama very much does. And so if they drop behind them, that'll probably be the reason. And I know that sounds evil and greedy and whatnot. And to an extent, yeah, okay. I don't even have the biggest problem with it because you could make a viable argument for Alabama. But what they're going to end up doing, if they do drop SMU out, is they're going to say stuff like, well, their strength of schedule wasn't as good. Well, their resume wasn't as good. Well, their ranked wins, they didn't have as many. But you know all that now. Before Saturday,
Right.
you know all of those things, and you still have them ahead of Alabama. So all of that should be baked into the cake. If you drop them behind Alabama, you are solely doing it because they lost a conference title game, which is garbage.
Yeah, I agree with you completely there. Josh Pate is our guest. His show live every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday on YouTube, 5 o'clock our time. You can catch your podcast wherever you get your podcasts, at Josh Pate CFB on Twitter. Now, the Big 12 championship game is going to be the location this week. What went behind that? Because you put up the poll question, everybody just assumed you're going to the SEC title game. Then you got Big 10. Hey, look at that. It's Oregon, it's Penn State. You were up at Penn State this week filming some stuff for CBS. Why the Big 12 title game?
Well, I had some narratives I had to shoot down. Let's just be real. Some harmful accusations have been thrown my way about biases and whatnot, and we all know that I am as straight as an arrow, play it right down the middle. And you need to ignore the tramp stamp I have on my lower back. That was a long time ago. I was in a much different headspace. So I also want to remind you, you guys don't need to be reminded, but I have kind of an affinity for both of these programs. Iowa State is a long-standing favorite of mine. Arizona State, love Kenny Dillingham, loved the trip out there we took a couple of weeks ago. And I said to myself then, if these two teams face off in Dallas, which was very cloudy at the time, but if they face off in Dallas, I think I may want to go to that game. And Ohio State got knocked out of the Big Ten game, so, the CBS overlords won't get as mad if I don't go there. And the SEC game is two teams I've already seen in person multiple times.
Yeah.
Probably will see either one or both of them again in the playoff. This is the only play-in game, if you will, in the entire thing. Like, there is unequivocally no doubt you win the Big 12 game, you're in. You lose it, you're out. And there's shades of gray on every other game. So I also think it's the earliest game in the day, which is great for me, and it may be the most entertaining game of the day. Yeah. And I think there's such an appreciation for both of those teams. Neither of those fan bases took this for granted. They've never been there before. It should feel like a mixture of a college football game and like a really high-level Texas high school state championship game. I just picture that kind of atmosphere all blended together.
We had a local writer write a piece on Oregon. Mateo Uiagalelei had 10.5 sacks this year. He was a monster for Oregon. He did not make the coach's first team all-listed in the Big Ten, and this local writer, Tyson Alger, wrote that the Big Ten coaches didn't want to give Oregon even more wins than they already had this year. It's kind of a little, hey, yeah, welcome, you're not gritty like us yet. I don't know if you agree with that, and that's okay if you don't, but I'm kind of interested in what this Big Ten weekend's going to be for Oregon. They went undefeated. They get to play a team they haven't played, so it's not Ohio State because they wet the bed. It's Penn State. These two haven't played since the Rose Bowl in the mid-'90s, which was kind of a launch point, really, for the Oregon program. Just what you make of the Big Ten title game and the opportunity Oregon has in year one in the Big Ten to finish this thing off and go undefeated and win a conference championship.
Yeah, they're trying to do what Texas is doing in the SEC. They're trying to do what Arizona State's doing in the Big 12. We do bold predictions in spring on my show. Radical concept, I know, but we take fan submissions for bold predictions. And some guy from Oregon, actually, said that a new arrival will win every Power Four conference. And we are in a position where SMU and Oregon and Arizona State and Texas could actually do that this weekend. So I think they may be all favored. Yeah, check me on that. But I look at the matchup, and I think the matchup comes down to the perimeter in a lot of ways, as much as it's a line of scrimmage game. I think it comes down to the perimeter because I don't think Oregon is going to have a ton of success running the ball. I think the game will be in Dylan Gabriel's hands, and he's got very capable pass catchers out wide. This is, to me, the best pair of corners that they face this year. And they got a really good safety as well. And Penn State is a top 15 man coverage team in the country. They trust their guys. They put them on islands a lot. And so I think about Jalen Kimber and A.J. Harris. Those are two portal additions that Penn State went and got that are now starting at corner for them, and they've been good all year. It's just so rare to have a need at that kind of position and go 2 for 2 in the portal. And those guys stayed healthy all year. So they're good there. I think yards after catch is a very, very important stat in this game. You got to stay on schedule because if you get behind schedule, these are really, really good edge rushers for Penn State. That front has the ability to take over the game. And so as challenging as Ohio State was for Oregon, I think Penn State is every bit as much that, but in a different way, because I think their pass rush is better than Ohio State's was. I still lean Oregon to win the game because I think about this game in terms of pop moments. It's the kind of game that I don't think is going to be incredibly high scoring, but I think it's the game where you draw on 2 or 3 moments. And I think Oregon has the better skill offensively to generate those moments, and I think that's what will decide the game.
On the other side, I know you broke it down in depth last night on the show. We kind of look at Penn State, and they haven't played a lot of meaningful games in terms of ranked opponents, so we haven't seen every second of them. Obviously, the USC game was close, the Minnesota game a couple of weeks ago. Looking at their offense, it feels kind of like Tyler Warren, circle him and stop him, and that's it. Is it more complex than that?
One other thing is Nick Singleton, the tailback, is playing as good as he's played all year. He'd been banged up, and I was up there a couple of days ago. I spent the day in State College to do some stuff for CBS and kind of got a good under-the-hood look at the program. I think Nick Singleton is probably next to Warren the most important player in this game for them because if they cannot sustain a running game, they don't have the difference makers out wide. Their best receiver's banged up as well. So we'll see if he's able to go. But even if he does go, this is not a loaded group at that position. Penn State has not had that in several years. So their offense will go as Drew Aller does on third down and as Nick Singleton does. And he's got to keep them on schedule to have third and shorts. Because if Penn State cannot maintain the illusion of balance in play calling, meaning if they can't stay in third and manageables and they're throwing the ball, it's a long afternoon. Dan Lanning's defense is plenty capable enough to turn them away on that front. So it's a tough, hard-nosed team. It's a team that can play very complementary ball. It's a 3-phase team, and it's a team that you could outgain and you could out-time of possession and you could outdo all these things and they still beat you. And you look at the box score and say, wow, this is misleading. Penn State's the kind of team that can win that kind of game.
I'm still sitting here on a Wednesday, and I'm still stunned thinking about how Ohio State lost that football game. I just – rivalries, I get it. I understand it. All due respect to the opponent. It just this is as down as Michigan's been in like 5-6 years. To lose as a 3-touchdown home favorite is crazy. What did you make of the flag planting debate that ensued in college football for 2 days? And, not that Ryan Day suddenly doesn't know how to coach football, but, these big game things and going 0 for 4, like how do you reevaluate how you feel about coaches when they lose games like that?
The flag planting thing is just whatever. Either go all in on it or ban it altogether. The stuff we do now is stupid. As for Ryan Day, I don't think that program approaches the Michigan rivalry the right way. I don't mean they don't take it seriously. They take it ultra seriously. I've been in that building. I've been around him many times. Like, they put a premium on that game. They focus on it all year. It's not that. It's whatever the particulars are of how they approach that game. It is not working for them because it's not bringing out the best in them. Michigan brings out the absolute best in themselves when they play Ohio State. So they both take it seriously. But in the micro, one of them is processing it the right way and the other one's not. And I don't know what the particulars on that are because I'm not in the building every day. I'm not Ryan Day. I don't know what the course corrections are. But I do not feel that fire the coach is always the answer on this stuff. I'm a believer that you could absolutely have the right guy for the job who's just not doing the job the absolute right way at the moment. So I'm always the last one to yell fire a guy, and I definitely don't think that's the answer here. First off, let's see what they do in the playoff. Secondly, let's see if a little course correction doesn't yield a big result. Because if you'll remember, Jim Harbaugh was in this spot. His own fan base wanted him gone in 2020. And what did he do? He made a minor course correction at Michigan, and then they ended up winning and winning and winning. And then they won conference titles and national title. And it was the same guy that people said was a failure and couldn't get the job done just 3 years prior. So just because you haven't done something always doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you got to make course corrections. That's what you're paid that kind of money to do.
So do you know who the Ohio State Connor Stallions is then?
That's a good question. I will say this. This is just breaking news on this show.
Oh.
And we got to keep it between us, obviously. This is very off the record as we do it on air. I was watching the game the other day. I was in my hotel room. I was about to go over to Kyle Field to do the Texas A&M game. And the game ends, and Michigan wins it. And who's the first person who texts me? Connor Stallions. So I thought to myself, wow, I have not thought about you all day, and you're totally off the radar now. And there you are, just as omnipresent as ever. Maybe it was like a mass text, and he just had it dialed up, and he sent it to everyone in his phone.
Just waiting.
Did you text him back?
Of course I did. I sent a bunch of gifts of myself.
Great stuff. He's the commissioner of college football. Go give him a follow on Twitter at Josh Pate,
That's
CFB.
the funniest possible text you could receive after watching that game.
There's Connor Stallions. Hey, it's been great to see the pucker meter. Thanks for the trademark the last 2 weeks showing up on social media for Ohio State games. Hopefully there's no pucker meter in the Big Ten title game this weekend. His show every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, 5 o'clock live on YouTube. Check the podcast wherever you find your podcast. Thanks as always, and we look forward to next week.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
There you go. Josh Pate of Josh Pate's College Football Show.
It's kind of a weird humble brag. Connor Stallions texting you after his favorite team wins a big game.
There go those Wolverines again. There go those Wolverines.
Do you think that text said "told ya" or
something along those lines, or maybe a couple of curse words in there? Bleep, yeah, a few of those.
I mean, look, Harbaugh's a great coach. We all know that, and it's not to say they didn't make some adjustment to that game. I also don't want to pretend that Connor Stallions didn't become major, massive part of that program, turning a corner,
pretty big deal, and
winning the national championship.
Also, I think the thing with Harbaugh and Day is at least with Harbaugh, you had the he had been an elite coach everywhere he had been.
Yeah, you weren't wondering it's to his point. They played it before the game. Some people are born on third and think they hit a triple. He said that about Ryan Day.
Because Ryan Day inherited the Urban Meyer job, and it was you were a coordinator, and it's your first head coaching job, and look at this. Look what you were handed. Yeah. It's a Lincoln Riley argument at Oklahoma. Like he helped build it into that, but he was handed a good situation.
He was.
And there's a difference between building something up. So interesting stuff there from Josh. We'll react to a little bit. We got a ton of college football stuff to get to in the final hour of the show. Signing day updates as well, portal updates. Everything's going crazy. We got a loaded final hour. Don't go anywhere. Dirt Sprague on 1080 The Fan.
Is it time to beef up your team?